Good morning, seniors. Our last lesson on personal finance today. We're going to talk about savings accounts and how you can maximize that interest you're earning on your savings account by doing different things, not necessarily savings accounts at banks. So we are going to start with three types of savings instruments. We're going to look at each one in turn. I will post this PowerPoint so that you can get the notes from there if you'd like. But go ahead and take notes. Make sure you have everything down because I've given you a skeleton outline here and it won't be a full outline on the screen, that is. All right, so the first type we're going to look at is the floating rate accounts. These are basically what we've already been talking about. Your bank, if you have a savings account right now, can change the interest rate on your savings account anytime they feel like it, especially as economic conditions change. If for some reason interest rates started skyrocketing in the next couple of days, which right now interest rates are low across the board, but if they started skyrocketing for some reason, inflation starts getting out of hand, then we would see the interest rate on savings accounts also start to rise because banks need more money so they can turn around and loan it out to other places. So these are short-term accounts for which the rate may change as the economic conditions change. Some examples of these are the Now account that we already talked about in the last section or the section before, I can't remember which. That's where, you're trying to make it like a checking account. It gains interest, but you can also write checks out of it. So your typical savings account. The money market deposit account is a money market account, typically has a minimum investment of at least $500. I've seen them upwards from there. Some banks, their minimum on a money market is like $10,000 or something like that. But they have they normally require a rather large down payment, a large investment. They have unlimited deposits, but limited number of withdrawals. For example, you can only withdraw 1 or 2 times per month, and I would be surprised if it were that much. Usually they're, maybe 2, 3 times per 6 months. So they're extremely limited in how often you can withdraw, but they pay a better rate than any going savings account. The second type is the money market mutual fund, and you see those acronyms beside them. The money market mutual fund is usually through a stock brokerage company, and they would pay probably at least as good a rate as a bank money market account would, maybe better. But they are not federally insured. That's a big difference there. Money you put in a bank like a credit union or a bank or a commercial bank is going to be federally insured. You're going to get out at least what you put in. But money put with a stock brokerage is not federally insured. Okay, so that's a big difference. That's typically why you get a better rate of return with a stock market, with a stockbroker, but you are taking more risk because it's not insured. Okay, the second type of savings instrument that we need to talk about is a time deposit. These earn a fixed rate of interest, which is usually much better than a savings account, but they require a specific amount of time between when you deposit the money and when you can take it out. Or they may even go so far as to have a specific maturity date. You cannot touch this money until this day. Okay, and there's 3 different types of these that we're going to talk about. So our outline gets more detailed here. Passbook account, the club account, and the certificate of deposit. Okay, so a passbook account, this name came from way back when, long time ago in like the 50s and 60s when these accounts originated, when they would actually give you a passbook and you would take it to the bank and you'd say, here's my passbook. I want to withdraw $50 from my savings account. And the teller would take your passbook, write in the new balance, and give it back to you. Obviously, we don't do that anymore because we're all online and doing everything that way. but these were typically offered by credit unions or thrift institutions like a savings and loan, um, for people who had any amount of money. You didn't have to have big deposits, but anybody could do this. The only thing is, with a passbook account, often you couldn't go in every day and withdraw money. You had to be you were limited to the number of withdrawals you could make. A club account is similar. It's like a savings for a specific purpose. A lot of banks will do this as a Christmas club. Some employers even do this, where they'll force you to save money every month out of your check for Christmas, and then at Christmas time, just maybe at Thanksgiving, they give you all the money out of that account that you've saved all year. Here's your Christmas fund. You go and spend it the way you want to. Could also be for a vacation or something like that. But they would purposely withhold, $5, $10, $15 or whatever from your paycheck and then give it all to you at once at the end of that year. Okay. Then the third kind is a certificate of deposit. These are ones that have a very specific maturity date. You may buy a certificate of deposit today and it will not mature for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. These, they usually pay a much higher interest rate than other types of accounts, but the penalty for early withdrawal is pretty severe. So the longer the time period that you allow your money to be held that way, the higher the interest rate you can get. But again, that penalty is pretty severe. So one of the things your book recommends is that you can work around that by, let's say you have $10,000 to invest. You wouldn't buy one CD worth $10,000. You might buy two of them worth $5 each. That way you divide that penalty in half if you had to get to your money in the middle of that time period. But if I've got this $1,000, I'm not going to touch it till after whatever, put it away in a certificate of deposit, and it will gain a better interest rate than a straight savings account. Okay, then we're going to look at some governmental securities. This is the third type, and we're going to look at savings bonds and treasury securities. Two types of savings bonds and one type of treasury security. Okay, so savings bonds. These are considered basically a risk-free investment because they're backed by the full faith and credit of our federal government. We're going to look at two types, the EE and the HH. I don't know where these names came from, but it's kind of weird. But these are basically investing money in the debt that the United States owes to the world. Okay, savings bonds and treasury bills, which is what we're going to talk about next, are ways that the government finances their debt. Remember, we talked about this back at the beginning of the year. The government is not a consumer. It has no money unless we give it to it. Okay? They cannot produce, they are not a producer of money. So the only way the government gets money is by taking it from us. And this is one way that they do that. Okay, so a Series EE is the first type. These are the most basic type of treasury bonds. They are purchased at half their face value. So if you have ever seen a treasury bond, it might say $50. Well, that means it's purchased for half of that, $25. And then usually the term is 20 years. 20 years from the date of issue, it can be redeemed for its full face value. So it doubles its money in 20 years. This means it's paying an interest rate of about 3.6%, which is still way better than most savings accounts. They can be held for up to 30 years, but after 30 years, it's pointless to hold on to them because they stop earning interest. If you held it for 30, you would get more than face value. Okay? The interest on them is not taxable from year to year. It is only taxable when you redeem it. So if you know that you're going to retire at a certain point, you're not going to have as much income, that would be a good time to redeem it, because then your income over the year is lower, and that helps with your tax, with what rate of tax you're paying on those. They are not subject to state and local taxes, and there's actually no tax on them if you use them for educational expenses. So if your parents bought Series EE bonds when you were born, you could.
Okay.
Sorry,
I found this.
Siri's thought I was talking to her. If your parents bought them when you were born, they could redeem them to use to pay for your college, but really they were only getting a 3.6% return when they could have been doing much better with, say, the Georgia savings accounts that are for that purpose. So, that's just something to weigh out as you approach that time of your life. The HH bonds are purchased for their full face value. So if an HH series bonds says $50, then you paid $50 for it. But interestingly enough, you earn interest on an HH bond with a semi-annual, twice a year, check from the U.S. Treasury. They would send you that check twice a year to pay you the interest on your HH bonds. But they can only be bought by redeeming the Series EE bonds. You can't pay cash for them. Now, Series EE, you can go into your local bank, or you can go into the Federal Reserve and buy them there. Okay. Next, we have Treasury bills. These are also known as T-bills. They can only be purchased from the U.S. Treasury directly or from the Federal Reserve. You can buy them at local banks sometimes, but you have to pay not a penalty, but you have to pay like a purchasing fee for buying them at a local bank. These have low interest rates, but they're still, again, they're a very secure investment. Nearly zero probability of default. So just very, very secure. They can be purchased in about any amount. And they don't have to have a set maturity date. You can buy a T-bill for 90 days. You can buy it for a year. You can buy it for longer, whatever. Okay, that is all that I have for today. If you have any questions, please let me know. But we're going to be reading through page 274 through 277 along with this, and we will start reviewing for our exam Wednesday or Thursday. Okay? Hope you have a good day.